My sister laughed when I discovered the house was stolen using my credit. She stopped laughing when the detectives arrived. I found out my sister stole my identity while I was unclogging my toilet with a wire hanger. That's not even me trying to be funny. That was genuinely the moment my life detonated. It was a Sunday night around 9:00 p.m. I remember because I had work the next morning. My bathroom smelled like death, and I was standing ankle-deep in bad decisions wondering how adulthood turned into this. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but I was expecting a call back from maintenance about the plumbing, so I answered with my shoulder while trying not to gag. Hello? Is this Daniel Mercer? Yeah. This is Heather calling from Crestline Financial regarding your mortgage delinquency. I froze. Not emotionally, physically. Like my brain literally stopped processing signals for a second. My what? Your mortgage account ending in 4421. The property located at 18 Fairmont Ridge is now 94 days delinquent. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was insane. Lady, I rent a one-bedroom apartment above a vape shop. My kitchen sink touches my bed if I lean far enough. I don't own property. Silence. Then keyboard clicking. Sir, can you verify your date of birth and last 4 digits of your social? I did. Everything matched. Every single thing. The mortgage was real. The account was in my name. And the balance?
$517,000.
I sat down right there on the bathroom floor, holding a bent wire hanger like some exhausted raccoon of a human being. Heather kept talking, but her voice started sounding underwater. Foreclosure proceedings. Missed payments. Collections. Legal review. I barely heard any of it because my brain locked onto one thing. Cosigner Linda Mercer. My mother. That's when the nausea hit. See, my family has always operated like a cult wrapped in fake politeness. My older sister Vanessa was the center of the universe. Always had been. Vanessa wanted horseback riding lessons? Done. Vanessa wanted a new Jeep at 16? Done. Vanessa wanted to find herself in Greece for 6 months after college? My parents practically held a fundraiser. Meanwhile, me? I worked at a warehouse straight out of high school. Paid my own bills, bought my own car, skipped vacations because rent existed. I was the easy child, which really means the child they could neglect without consequences, and apparently the child whose identity they could steal. The second I got off the phone, I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, sounding annoyed. Daniel, do you know what time it is? Why is there a mortgage in my name? Dead silence. No confusion. No, what are you talking about? Just silence. Then she sighed. We were going to explain everything. That sentence changed something inside me forever. You were going to explain? I repeated slowly because my brain genuinely couldn't process the confidence in her voice. Like this was a misunderstanding. Like she borrowed my lawnmower instead of committing multiple felonies. It was temporary, my mom said. Vanessa just needed help qualifying. I stood up so fast I slammed my knee into the sink cabinet. Help qualifying? I shouted. You stole my identity for $500,000. Lower your voice. That almost made me lose it. I was standing in a flooded bathroom while debt collectors hunted me down, and she was worried about my tone. Then I heard Vanessa in the background. Is he being dramatic again? Dramatic? I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unreal. Put her on the phone. No! My mother snapped. Put her on. A few seconds later, Vanessa came on sounding annoyed. I interrupted her night. What? Not hello? Not sorry. Just what? I could hear music behind her, glasses clinking, people laughing. A party. These people were hosting guests while my financial life collapsed. You opened a mortgage in my name. Oh my God, she groaned. Dad said you'd overreact. Overreact. It's not like you were using your credit for anything important. That hit harder than the mortgage, because that's how they saw me. Not family, not a person. Just unused resources. Extra credit. Disposable stability. You ruined my credit. We were making the payments at first. At first? Silence. Then she softened her voice. Danny, I needed this house. I looked around my apartment. Water stains on the ceiling, broken cabinets. A mattress on the floor visible through the bathroom door. I skipped meals some weeks to save money. Meanwhile, my sister apparently needed a luxury house. You needed a 5-bedroom property? It's not 5 bedrooms, she muttered. That was her correction. Not the fraud. Not the identity theft. The bedroom count. Then my father got on the line. Son, calm down and think rationally. I should mention my father only says think rationally before saying something insane. You forged my signature. We had power of attorney. No, you had power of attorney 10 years ago after my surgery. We still had the paperwork. Like that somehow made it legal. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. Your sister deserved that house. You should be honored to help your family. Honored. I stared at toilet water creeping toward my socks, while party music echoed through the phone from a house bought with my stolen identity. And something inside me went cold. Not angry. Cold. I'm honored, I said quietly, to see what all of you look like in court. Then I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I stopped caring whether my family loved me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. eating dry cereal while staring at my credit report like it was an autopsy. Every page made it worse. 3 maxed-out credit cards. A personal loan for $38,000. Late payments. Collections. And the mortgage. The massive mortgage attached to a house I'd never seen. My credit score had dropped from 781 to 514. Years of careful budgeting erased by my own family. I kept refreshing the page hoping it would magically change. Like maybe this was some mistake. But every document pointed back to them. Same address. Same contact numbers. Same signatures. Only the signatures weren't mine. That part made my skin crawl. I stared at those forged signatures for almost an hour. My name written in handwriting that almost looked right. Close enough to fool a bank. Close enough to ruin my life. Around 4 odd a.m., I called into work pretending I had food poisoning. Honestly, I thought I might actually throw up. The next morning, I started making calls. Credit bureaus, mortgage company, fraud departments. Every conversation felt like punishment. Hold music. Transfers. The same questions over and over. Are you sure you didn't authorize the loan? Yeah, buddy. I totally forgot buying a luxury house while surviving on instant noodles. By noon, I had frozen my credit and filed identity theft reports. But it still didn't feel real. So I did something stupid. I drove to the house. Part of me needed proof. Part of me wanted to see what my destroyed future looked like. The neighborhood was one of those expensive suburban developments where every house looked copied and pasted from a rich people catalog. Perfect sidewalks, decorative trees, luxury SUVs everywhere. And there it was, my house. Or legally mine anyway. Huge white exterior. Black trim, massive windows, 3-car garage. I actually felt dizzy staring at it. Because while I was rationing groceries, Vanessa had been living like a celebrity using my identity as funding. Her white Range Rover sat in the driveway. Of course, she drove a Range Rover. I sat across the street gripping my steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. Then the front door opened. Vanessa walked out laughing with 2 women carrying yoga mats. Designer sunglasses. Perfect hair. She looked happy. That's the part that broke me. Not guilty. Not nervous. Happy. Like she genuinely believed she deserved all of it. One of her friends said something that made them laugh harder before climbing into a Tesla parked behind the Range Rover. I looked down at my own car. The AC barely worked. The check engine light had been on for months. And suddenly I realized something. My family never thought I'd fight back. They thought I'd eventually accept it like I accepted everything else. That was their mistake. Because sitting there across from that stolen house, I decided I was done being the easy son. The first person I called was my cousin Eric. Not because we were especially close, because Eric hated my family almost as much as I suddenly did. He answered on the second ring. Yo, I need a favor. That bad? You have no idea. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in his garage while he changed brake pads on a motorcycle that looked legally questionable. Eric listened without interrupting. No fake sympathy. No shocked gasps. Just quiet. Then he leaned back against his toolbox and whistled. That's prison time. Apparently my parents disagree. They always treated Vanessa like royalty. I laughed bitterly. You remember when she crashed Dad's BMW? The one they blamed on you somehow? Exactly. I was 17. Vanessa drove drunk into a mailbox, but somehow the story became that I stressed her out by embarrassing her at school. That was my family in a nutshell. Vanessa destroys things. Everyone else cleans it up. Eric wiped grease off his hands. So what are you gonna do? That question sat heavy in my chest. Because until then, I honestly didn't know. Part of me still wanted my parents to wake up and realize how insane this was. But another part of me already knew the truth. They didn't think they were wrong. That's what made it terrifying. My mother genuinely believed family loyalty gave her permission to ruin me. And Vanessa? Vanessa thought my life existed to support hers. I'm going nuclear, I finally said. Eric smiled slowly. Good. Then he disappeared into the house and came back holding a folder. What's this? Receipts. I frowned. For what? For Vanessa. Turns out my cousin had been collecting dirt on my sister for years. Not intentionally at first. Vanessa was just the kind of person who left destruction everywhere. Unpaid contractors, fake charity fundraisers, boutique returns she claimed were stolen. Even a GoFundMe she started for a health emergency that was apparently just lip fillers and a spa retreat in Sedona. I stared at the paperwork. How do you even have this? She screwed over my friend's landscaping company last year, never paid them $5,000. Apparently Vanessa's entire lifestyle ran on manipulation. Small lies, bigger lies, then massive lies wrapped in fake positivity quotes. You know the crazy part? Eric said. What? She probably thinks you're the villain right now. And honestly, he was right. Somewhere inside that giant stolen house, my sister was probably crying about how unfair I was being. That realization made something click in my head. People like Vanessa never stop on their own. They stop when consequences finally hit hard enough. I looked at Eric. You know any good lawyers? He grinned. Oh, buddy, I know exactly the one. The lawyer's name was Julia Hart. And the second she heard my story, she said 2 words that changed everything. Don't panic. Easy for her to say. She worked in a downtown office with marble floors and a coffee machine that probably cost more than my car. Meanwhile, I was one missed paycheck away from financial collapse. Still, Julia had this calm energy that made you feel like chaos could actually be organized. She sat across from me, flipping through my documents while I tried not to sweat through my only decent button-up shirt. This is fraud, she said plainly. Yeah, I figured that part out. No, Daniel, this is organized fraud. That wording hit differently. Organized, planned, intentional. Because deep down, some part of me still wanted to believe my parents got manipulated by Vanessa. Julia destroyed that fantasy in under 30 seconds. They forged income records, she continued. Fake employment verification, false tax documents, somebody put real effort into this. I stared at the papers. My fake salary listed as $182,000. My fake job title, Regional Logistics Director. I almost laughed. At my real job, I once got yelled at for using too much packing tape. So what happens now? I asked. Julia leaned back. Best case? We prove identity theft quickly, remove liability, and the bank goes after your parents and sister. And worst case? You spend years fixing your credit while your family blames you for consequences they created. That sounded more realistic. Then she asked the question I wasn't ready for. Are you willing to press charges? My stomach tightened immediately. Because despite everything, they were still my family. I hated that fact. Hated that some stupid emotional instinct still wanted to protect them. Julia noticed my hesitation. Daniel, she said carefully, people who love you don't destroy your future for a mortgage. That sentence stayed with me. Because she was right. Normal families borrow money. They ask for help. They don't impersonate their son to buy luxury property. I rubbed my face. What do you need from me? Everything. And she meant everything. Texts, emails, call logs, social media posts. Proof Vanessa lived in the house knowingly. Proof my parents participated willingly. By the end of the meeting, I had a checklist so long it looked like preparation for a federal investigation. Which honestly, maybe it was becoming. Then Julia said something that made my pulse spike. Do not warn them. Too late for that. I'd already confronted them. She sighed when I admitted it. What did they say? I thought about my father's voice. Your sister deserved that house. I felt anger crawl back into my chest. They said I should be honored to help the family. Julia actually blinked. Then she muttered, wow. Yeah, even hearing it out loud sounded insane. Before I left, she handed me a business card. If they contact you again, save everything. Oh, they'll contact me. And somehow, I knew the next call would be worse. The call started 3 hours later. First my mom, then my dad, then Vanessa, then all 3 again. I ignored every single one. By midnight, my voicemail sounded like the world's most dysfunctional hostage negotiation. Daniel, call us back. You're overreacting. We can fix this privately. Then came my favorite voicemail from Vanessa. You're literally destroying this family over paperwork. Paperwork. That's what she called identity theft. I saved every message and forwarded them to Julia. She replied with one sentence. Keep documenting. So I did. Turns out rage makes you extremely organized. I made folders, timelines, screenshots, I even started recording phone calls after checking state laws. And the more evidence I collected, the uglier everything became. Because my family wasn't sorry, not even a little. They were angry at me for refusing to stay quiet. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. I looked through the peephole and nearly laughed. She was carrying food. Classic Linda Mercer strategy. Commit emotional terrorism, then arrive with lasagna pretending that cancels everything out. I opened the door halfway. "What do you want?" She held up the casserole dish like a peace offering. "Can I come in?" No. That clearly offended her. "Daniel, neighbors can hear." Good. For once, I wanted people to hear. "You committed fraud." "We did what we had to do for your sister." There it was again. That insane loyalty. Like Vanessa was royalty and the rest of us existed to fund her happiness. "You destroyed my credit." "We were going to pay it." "You already stopped paying it." "That's temporary." Everything with them was temporary. Temporary lies, temporary fraud, temporary destruction of my future, until consequences showed up. My mom's voice softened. "You know your sister's been crying nonstop." I stared at her. Actually stared, because somehow she still thought Vanessa was the victim here. "Do you hear yourself? She could lose the house. I could lose my entire financial future." "But you're young," she said immediately. "You can recover." That sentence hit me like a slap, because she meant it. In her mind, my life was more expendable than Vanessa's comfort. I stepped back from the door. "You need to leave." "Daniel!" "Leave?" Her expression hardened instantly. The sweet, worried mother act disappeared like somebody flipped a switch. "You always were selfish." I almost laughed from the shock. Selfish. Me. The kid who never asked for money. Never caused problems. Never needed rescuing. Meanwhile, Vanessa committed fraud, and somehow I was selfish. "You picked your favorite child," I said quietly. "Now live with it." Then I shut the door. A minute later, I heard the casserole dish hit the hallway floor. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty anymore. 3 days later, the detectives called. Not local police. Financial crimes. Apparently, once banks start seeing forged documents, fake tax records, and $500,000 defaults, people with badges get interested fast. Detective Alvarez invited me downtown for an interview. I showed up carrying enough paperwork to qualify as a moving hazard. The detective looked exhausted in that specific way people do after years of dealing with human stupidity. He flipped through my evidence silently. Every few minutes, his eyebrows climbed higher. Finally, he looked up. "Your parents really thought this would work forever?" "I don't think they thought that far ahead." That got the smallest smile out of him. Then he asked the question everyone eventually asked. "Did you knowingly allow them to use your identity?" "No." "Ever sign anything related to this property?" "Never even saw the house until last week." He nodded and kept taking notes. Then he pulled out copies of the mortgage documents. Seeing my fake signature again made me sick. But what really caught my attention was the notary section. Different ink. Different handwriting. Even I could tell something was off. Detective Alvarez tapped the page. "This notary retired 6 years ago." I blinked. "What?" "Stamp number belongs to a retired notary in another county." Every layer of this thing got worse. Fake signatures. Fake income. Fake employment. Now fake notarization. This wasn't desperation anymore. This was an entire operation. "Your sister currently lives in the property?" he asked. "Yeah. And she knows the loan was fraudulent?" I thought about Vanessa laughing on the phone. "You weren't using your credit for anything important." "Absolutely." The detective wrote something down. Then came the part that made my stomach twist. "We'll likely need formal statements against your parents and sister if this proceeds criminally." Even after everything, hearing those words hurt. Because part of me still remembered birthdays, Christmas mornings, family vacations before everything became toxic. Detective Alvarez noticed my expression. "You don't have to decide today." "Yes, I do," I said quietly. Because I already knew the truth. If I backed down now, they'd do it again. Maybe not to me. Maybe to somebody else. People who never face consequences become dangerous. I took a breath. "I'll cooperate fully." The detective nodded once. Then he handed me a card. "If they contact you threatening or pressuring you, call me immediately." Threatening. Funny word. Because my family didn't threaten people directly. They used guilt, manipulation, emotional blackmail disguised as concern. And right on schedule, my phone buzzed. "Vanessa." I stared at the screen while Detective Alvarez watched. "She has incredible timing," he muttered. "Yeah, she really did," I answered. And the second I heard my sister crying, I knew things were about to get uglier. "Daniel," Vanessa sobbed, "please don't do this." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because suddenly she sounded terrified now that consequences existed. Meanwhile, I'd been terrified for weeks. "You committed fraud," I said flatly. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." That sentence again, like identity theft was some little accident that got out of hand. In the background, I could hear my mother crying, too. A whole orchestra of guilt. Vanessa lowered her voice. "The detectives came by the house." Good. For the first time since this nightmare started, I actually felt calm. "They asked questions about the mortgage. Dad's freaking out." Sounds stressful. "Daniel, please." There was something different in her voice now. Not remorse. Fear. Fear for herself. For the house. For her image. Not once had she apologized for destroying my future. Everything was still about her. "I could get arrested," she whispered. I leaned back in my chair. "You should have thought about that before stealing my identity. It was Mom and Dad's idea." There it was. The blame shifting. I glanced at Detective Alvarez across the room. He raised an eyebrow like he'd heard this exact conversation 1,000 times before. "You still sign documents," I said. "I didn't know it was illegal." I actually laughed out loud. "You didn't know forging signatures and fake tax records were illegal?" Silence. Then crying again. The performance was honestly impressive. If manipulation were an Olympic sport, Vanessa would have been undefeated. "Please," she whispered. "If I lose this house, I lose everything." And there it was. The truth. Not family. The house. That giant stolen monument to her entitlement. I thought about my apartment. My destroyed credit. The years it would take to recover financially. Then I thought about her yoga parties and luxury vacations funded by debt in my name. Something inside me hardened. "You should start packing." She gasped like I slapped her. "How can you be so cruel?" Amazing. My own sister stole my identity, and somehow I was the villain. "You know what's cruel?" I said quietly. "Destroying someone's life because you wanted granite countertops." Then I hung up. Detective Alvarez stared at me for a second. "She always like that?" "You have no idea." He nodded slowly. "The bank's moving toward foreclosure faster than expected." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means your family's about to panic. And judging by the 23 missed calls waiting on my phone," he was absolutely right. The panic started the next morning. At 7:12 a.m., someone started pounding on my apartment door hard enough to shake the walls. Not knocking. Pounding. I already knew who it was. Vanessa. I opened the door halfway and immediately regretted it. She looked awful. Mascara smeared. Hair messy. Designer hoodie wrinkled like she slept in it. Honestly, it was the first time my sister had looked like a normal human being in years. She shoved past me before I could stop her. "We need to talk." "No, you need to leave." "Daniel, please." She looked around my apartment like she'd never actually seen how I lived before. Which honestly, she probably hadn't. People like Vanessa don't notice struggle unless it happens to them. Her eyes landed on my folding table. My tiny kitchen. The ancient couch I bought off Craigslist. And for a second she looked confused. Like reality finally cracked through her little fantasy world. "You actually live like this?" she asked quietly. I stared at her. That question told me everything. She genuinely had no idea. No clue how hard I worked just to survive. No clue what it meant to choose between groceries and gas money. Because while I was drowning quietly, she was hosting wine nights in a stolen house. "You need to go." Instead, she started crying again. Real crying this time, not dramatic sniffles. Panic. "They're talking about freezing my accounts." I stayed silent. "Dad says the bank might take the house within weeks." Still silent. Then she grabbed my arm. "I'm your sister." I pulled away immediately. "No, you're the person who stole my identity." That hit her hard. Her whole face crumpled. "I said I was sorry." "No, you said you needed the house." Silence. Because she knew I was right. Then came the part that almost impressed me with its audacity. "What if we put the house in your name officially?" I blinked. "What?" "You technically already qualify. We could refinance later, maybe." I started laughing so hard I had to sit down. She looked offended. You think this is funny? You are actively suggesting more fraud. It wouldn't be fraud if you agreed. That sentence told me something terrifying. Vanessa genuinely didn't understand consequences. She thought rules were obstacles for other people. Fixable, negotiable, temporary, exactly like my parents did. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for weeks. Did you ever feel guilty? She opened her mouth, closed it, then quietly said, I thought Mom and Dad handled everything. Coward! Even now, she couldn't fully admit what she did. A loud knock interrupted us. Then another. My stomach tightened, because unlike Vanessa's fake polite pounding earlier, this knock sounded official. And judging by the sudden fear on my sister's face, she knew exactly who was standing outside. Vanessa stopped breathing for a second, actually froze. Then came another knock. Sharp, controlled, the kind that says whoever's outside already knows the truth. I walked to the door slowly while my sister stood behind me looking like she might collapse. When I opened it, 2 detectives stood in the hallway. Detective Alvarez was one of them. Morning, he said calmly. Vanessa made this tiny choking sound behind me. Alvarez looked past my shoulder and nodded once. Ms. Mercer. She immediately started crying again. I can explain. That line must get exhausting for detectives. Alvarez stayed completely expressionless. We'd like to ask you some questions regarding the Fairmont Ridge property. Vanessa looked at me like I was supposed to save her. That part almost made me angry again. Even now, after everything, she still expected me to protect her from consequences. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she whispered. The second detective spoke for the first time. Ma'am, did you knowingly reside in a property obtained through fraudulent financial documentation? Vanessa blinked rapidly. I don't understand legal language. That nearly broke Alvarez. I saw him physically look away to hide a reaction. You lived in the house? He simplified. Yes. You knew the mortgage was under your brother's name? Silence. Ms. Mercer? Yes. And you continued living there anyway? More silence. Then tears again. My God, the tears. At this point, I honestly wondered if she practiced crying in mirrors. I was going to fix it, she whispered. How? Alvarez asked. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because there was never a plan. People like Vanessa think consequences are future problems, until suddenly the future arrives. The hallway felt tiny, claustrophobic. I could hear my upstairs neighbor's TV through the ceiling, while my sister's entire life collapsed 3 feet away from my microwave. Then Vanessa looked at me. Not the detectives. Me. Please say something. And that moment hurt more than I expected. Because for one stupid second, I saw the little girl who used to follow me around when we were kids. Before favoritism poisoned everything. Before entitlement turned her into this person. But then I remembered the forged signatures. The destroyed credit. The sleepless nights. The collections calls. And my sympathy died again. I already said something, I told her quietly. What? You should have started packing. Vanessa burst into tears so hard she almost folded in half. The detectives exchanged a glance. Then Alvarez gently motioned toward the hallway. Ms. Mercer, we need you to come with us downtown for questioning. The pure terror on her face finally answered one question for me. For the first time in her life, nobody was coming to rescue her. My mother called me 37 times that day. 37, I counted. By call 20, her voicemail stopped sounding emotional and started sounding angry. Your sister is terrified. You've humiliated this family. I hope you're proud of yourself. That last one almost made me laugh. Because honestly, a tiny part of me was proud. Not because Vanessa was suffering. Because for the first time in my life, I stopped letting them walk over me. Around 6 p.m., my father finally showed up at my apartment. No casserole this time. No fake kindness. He looked exhausted. Older somehow, like stress had physically pulled him downward. The second I opened the door, he started talking. You need to stop this now. Not hello, not son, just demands. I can't stop a criminal investigation. You can refuse to cooperate. I stared at him. You forged my signature. We were trying to help your sister. There are legal ways to help people. She would have lost the house. She never should have had the house. That hit him hard. I saw anger flash across his face immediately. There it is, he snapped. You've always been jealous of her. Jealous. That word genuinely stunned me. Not because it hurt, Because it revealed how warped their thinking really was. You think I'm jealous because I didn't want my identity stolen? You hated seeing her successful. Successful? Interesting word for unemployed fraud beneficiary. I crossed my arms. She bought luxury furniture with credit cards in my name. My father waved that away like it was irrelevant. She finally had stability. I almost laughed in his face. Vanessa's version of stability apparently involved committing felonies and hosting brunch parties. Then he said something I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. Family sacrifices for each other. I nodded slowly. You're right. For 1 second, he looked relieved. Then I continued. And I've been the only one sacrificing my entire life. Silence. Because he knew I was right. I paid my own bills, handled my own problems, never asked for bailouts. Meanwhile, every family resource got poured into Vanessa like she was some endless investment opportunity. You know what the worst part is? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. You all expected me to accept this. My father looked away, and that tiny reaction told me everything. They really had expected that. Expected me to absorb the damage quietly while Vanessa kept living her dream life. I suddenly felt exhausted. Not angry, just tired. You should go, I said. Daniel, I mean it. He stood there another second like he wanted to argue. But for once in his life, my father realized he wasn't controlling the situation anymore. So he left. And as I watched him walk down the hallway looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, I realized something strange. I didn't miss my family anymore. Because the truth was, I never really had one.
A week later, the foreclosure notice was posted on the house. I know because Vanessa sent me pictures of it. 16 pictures, actually. Close-ups, wide shots, selfies with tear-streaked mascara standing beside the notice like she was documenting a natural disaster. Her caption on one message actually said, "I hope you're happy." That part almost impressed me. The ability to make her own fraud someone else's fault should have been studied scientifically. By then, the investigation had exploded. The bank confirmed forged employment records. The fake company used on my mortgage application didn't exist. The tax documents were fabricated. Even the notary stamp turned out stolen. Julia told me the prosecutors were becoming extremely interested. Apparently, financial crimes get attention fast when the fraud amount crosses $500,000. Especially when multiple family members are involved. Meanwhile, my relatives started picking sides. That was fun. Suddenly, random aunts and cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years became experts on forgiveness. Family is family. Your parents made mistakes. Do you really want your sister arrested? Funny how nobody asked whether Vanessa wanted to ruin my life before doing it. My Aunt Cheryl cornered me after work one afternoon. She smelled like perfume and judgment. "You know your mother hasn't been sleeping." I shrugged. "I haven't either. That's different." That sentence told me everything I needed to know about my family dynamic. My suffering was manageable. Theirs was tragic. Aunt Cheryl lowered her voice. "If you drop this, your father says they'll sign the house over to you." I stared at her. "Are they insane?" "Daniel, think practically." "No, you think practically. Why would I want a fraudulent mortgage attached to a foreclosure investigation?" She looked annoyed now, because apparently refusing to participate in additional crimes made me difficult. Then came the guilt trip. "Your mother says you've changed." I laughed before I could stop myself. Of course I changed. Finding out your family views you as a financial resource tends to do that. That night I drove past the house one last time. The giant luxury house that destroyed my family. Moving boxes sat in the driveway. Vanessa's Range Rover was gone. And for the first time since this started, the place looked empty. Cold, like the fantasy had finally died. I sat there for a minute remembering how jealous and powerless I felt the first time I saw it. Funny how different it looked now. Not impressive, just expensive. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Julia. "Call me. We got the prosecutor's decision." My stomach dropped instantly. Because deep down, I already knew what she was going to say. I called Julia immediately. She answered on the first ring. "They're filing charges." Just like that. No dramatic pause. No build-up. My chest tightened anyway. Against who? All three. I leaned back against my car seat, staring at the empty house. Mom, Dad, Vanessa. Criminal charges. Even after everything, hearing it out loud felt surreal. Julia's voice stayed calm.
Bank fraud, identity theft, falsifying financial documents, conspiracy charges. The prosecutor's office isn't playing around. I closed my eyes. Part of me expected to feel victorious. Instead, I just felt tired, like emotionally exhausted down to the bone. What happens now? They'll probably be offered plea deals first. And if they refuse, then it goes to trial. Trial. Jesus. I rubbed my face. This is insane. No, Julia said quietly. What they did to you was insane. That sentence stayed with me, because for weeks my family had worked overtime trying to convince me I was overreacting. Too emotional, too harsh, too unforgiving. But normal people don't steal their son's identity to buy luxury property. Normal sisters don't watch their brother drown financially while hosting wine nights in a stolen house. I finally asked the question sitting in my chest. Do you think they ever actually cared about me? Julia was silent for a second. Then she answered carefully. I think some people confuse love with ownership. That one hurt, because it felt true. My parents loved me the same way people love useful things, as long as I stayed quiet. Helpful. Convenient. The second I defended myself, I became the problem. A car pulled into the driveway across the street. Realtors, probably preparing the property for seizure. The giant dream house already looked smaller somehow. Less magical. Just wood and drywall built on lies. Then Julia cleared her throat. There's one more thing. What? The bank approved removal of the mortgage from your credit history pending final judgment. I stopped breathing for a second. What? Your score won't recover overnight, but legally they now recognize you as a fraud victim. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because after weeks of drowning, that was the first piece of good news I'd heard. You're serious? Yes. Relief hit me so hard I had to grip the steering wheel. For the first time since this nightmare started, I could finally see a future again. Not a perfect one, but mine. Then my phone buzzed again. Dad? I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. His voice sounded hollow. They're arresting your mother tomorrow. I closed my eyes. And suddenly the victory didn't feel victorious at all. I didn't know what to say. That's the part nobody tells you about revenge. You imagine satisfaction, closure, justice. But sometimes it just feels sad. My father sounded older than I'd ever heard him. Defeated. They're giving Vanessa a plea deal, he said quietly. Your mother might take one too. And you? Silence. Then, my lawyer says I should. I leaned back in my chair staring at my apartment ceiling. The same stained ceiling I used to hate suddenly felt weirdly comforting. Because at least it was mine. No lies attached. Dad cleared his throat. She's been crying nonstop. I knew he meant Mom. But honestly, I couldn't carry their emotions anymore. For my entire life, that had been my role. Absorb the damage. Protect the peace. Stay quiet. Not anymore. You should have thought about all this before you forged my signature. I know. That surprised me. No excuses. No manipulation. Just exhaustion? Then he asked the question I think he'd been avoiding this entire time. Do you hate us? I thought about that carefully. About birthdays, road trips, Christmas mornings before everything became transactional. Then I thought about collection calls, panic attacks, sleeping 3 hours a night wondering if my future was ruined forever. And Vanessa laughing while living in that house. Finally, I answered honestly. I think you loved Vanessa more than you loved doing the right thing. He started crying quietly. I'd never heard my father cry before. Not once in my entire life. I failed you, he whispered. Yeah, he did. But weirdly, hearing him admit it released something inside me. Not forgiveness, just clarity. A few months later, the house officially went into foreclosure. Vanessa took a plea deal to avoid prison time. Probation, restitution, mandatory fraud counseling. My mother got probation too. Dad received the harshest penalties financially because investigators proved he helped create fake documents. And me? Slowly, I rebuilt. My credit recovered faster than expected once the fraud ruling finalized. I got promoted at work, moved into a better apartment, started sleeping normally again. Sometimes people ask if I regret pressing charges. Honestly, no, because consequences are the only language some people understand. And protecting people from consequences doesn't make you kind. It makes you complicit. Last month, I passed by the old neighborhood again. Different family in the house now. Kids playing in the yard. Completely ordinary. No giant emotional meaning attached anymore. Just a house. Funny how something that once destroyed my life eventually became meaningless. But the best part? For the first time ever, my life finally belonged to me.